Welcome back. So, in this episode, I'm going to be talking about the meaning of words, specifically just a handful of words that I feel get thrown around a lot, and that I don't want to say and assume that everyone who's using these words don't know what it means or doesn't know what it means or they mean, but just based on their behavior. And then again, too, sometimes I honestly think they just don't know what it means or they have a misunderstanding of what it means. And so I'll just dive right in. The first one I'll talk about is phobia. And so a lot of times you hear in I would say society and on social media and so forth that somebody is blank phobic, and it's one of those things where I think a lot of us understand what they're trying to say, but phobia in fact is a fear. It's not a hate. Now a lot of times, no, I shouldn't say a lot of times. Some of the times fears do turn into hate, and it's more just a hate of ignorance. It's a hate of the unknown. But a phobia in and of itself is simply a fear of something. And so to say someone's blank phobic, you're really misrepresenting them because, again, you're not accurately describing because, somebody being afraid of a certain demographic of people, it isn't the same thing as hating them. I wouldn't, somebody who's afraid simply needs to be educated or experience the counteracting behavior for that fear to go away. If people might be a fear of arachnophobia. It's a fear of spiders. It doesn't mean that somebody individually hates spiders and it's their life goal to see no spiders exist. It's just a matter of that they make, and that's something too that I think is important for us as individuals is to be able to make those distinctions, and just make your own self-identification of that you have a phobia of a certain something. I think that people should be able to publicly say that because you're identifying that it's an irrational fear, that it's not necessarily justified in anything, or it's justified on a very small platform, a small hand of experiences. But again, I think it's important for us to understand words and what they mean, because when you're trying to bring attention to something, when you're trying to bring attention to injustices or attention to people hating other people or whatever, it's really important to be accurate when you're talking about. Otherwise, anything you say could be discredited, even though it may be very well true. So again, I think it's just important to, again, we can all have our opinions, but if you feel compelled to stand on a soapbox, so to speak, if you feel compelled to be an aggressor towards somebody and to be, say somebody coming to the rescue, it's important to be accurate, because then you're not doing your cause a just service. You're not helping it out. And so the next word I want to talk about is bigot. And so again, I see a lot of people who use this as a way of I want to say essentially winning an argument. It's not winning an argument, but it's really just kind of, people think that if we're disagreeing about something or if we're debating something and then you say, well, you're a bigot. That's somehow this hand grenade that no one can come back from. That somehow, because you called me this name first, that somehow anything you say following it is true. Anything that anything I say is immediately evil. Again, to me, it's a really big sign that you don't have much to say, that you don't have an argument. If you feel the need to try to have this one line response that somehow is supposed to be impenetrable, and again, I will come back to the fact that it gets thrown around way too much to where people who are actual bigots are going unscathed. They're not being they're not really being brought to light. They're not being it's losing its meaning. But again, so to define a bigot is somebody who doesn't tolerate the opinions of others. Again, and so it's just like, so if you're a sexist, if you're a racist, sure, you're a bigot, but it's not limited to those. I feel like a lot of people think that that's just another way of collectively putting that expression together. That if and again, and no, it's just simply an intolerance of opinions other than your own. And so again, that's the thing, is I've seen a lot of people who partake in bigotry who use the term bigot, and because again, they're being intolerant of opinions other than their own. So it's really important, if you're trying to bring justice to life, you're trying to bring social inequalities to light, to be accurate and to not fling words around so whimsically, to where they lose their meanings, or they lose that cause loses credibility because it's being misrepresented. And the first and foremost word I want to talk about is, I feel like, a word that kind of started a lot of this conflation of actions and conflation of meanings of words, because I have all the words of people not understanding them. I really feel like this is like the number one And it was, I say it was used in an article recently. I actually read yesterday, where I couldn't believe that in the same line on the article, that it showed how much the author of this article had no idea what the word meant in its tolerance. And so, just for clarification, just to again, because I know a lot of times people say their opinions on what words mean and so forth. So I just want to read the top Google search of tolerance definition that says the ability or willingness to tolerate something, in particular the existence of opinions or behavior that one does not necessarily agree with. It's pretty cut and dry what that means. And again, let's go down. The capacity to endure and continue subjection to something without an adverse reaction. So without freaking out, without being hostile. Again, hearing words you don't necessarily agree with and not losing your mind. That's tolerance. And so I'll move to the article. Where the heck is it? Here we go. And it's sad because it's just one of those things where I don't really understand the end result. I feel like a lot of people think that if they make these comments, if they write these types of articles and such, that somehow the problem's just going to go away, or the people are just going to go away. It's just one of those things where, it reminds me a lot of like a kid throwing a tantrum trying to get something that if I scream long enough, the parent's just going to cave and give it to me. I'm going to get what I want, rather than, actually trying to put in the work and figuring out the like I said, that slow but effective process of moving forward and getting resolution. Because I feel like the majority of us in the country just want to get along, just want to really coexist and be tolerant of each other. But a big part of it's just these people that want quick fixes, that want the problem done now, and they're actually prolonging the process of it all. And so I'll get right into this. It says, so the title of the article is "Ignorant Trump Supporters Not Wanted in Bozeman." So I live in this area. It says, let's see if I can cut down to it. Well, for starters, the main bulk of it starts off really tolerant, I gotta say. It says, "They're easy to spot. Uneducated, racist, and full of hate, fear, ignorance, and Trump flags on the back of their pickup trucks, saluting the most corrupt, incompetent moron to ever defile the office of presidency. The threats will be so bad that the Oval Office will need the fumigation for the President Biden." Again, that's not really starting off super tolerant, I gotta say. One, you're just assuming that everyone who's a Trump supporter is a racist and full of hate and fear, and again, you're not actually talking about any kind of personal experience. If you want to talk about a specific, I'm sure that there are uneducated racist people who are full of hate and ignorance and so forth that do support Trump, but to simply just say that everyone who supports Trump is ignorant and racist is again intolerant, and again it's bigoted. But again, and then again too, to say that Trump's an incompetent moron, again, you're just calling him a name that doesn't accomplish anything. If the subject on hand and we're debating about is intellect, then that would be prevalent. It would be prevalent to talk about his intelligence or lack thereof. But again, it's just this unnecessary need to fling mud, and again, for your own cause, it's not helping. It's not helping, people that don't support Trump by using all these name callings. But again. It talks about how, let's say, luckily, the four-year nightmare is about to come to an end in November. Stay out. And it says this is where the pure hypocrisy comes. "Stay out of Bozeman. We are tolerant." It literally says that. It says, "Stay out of Bozeman. We are tolerant." That's the following words after he's intolerant. It just says we're tolerant, and I'm like, do you know what tolerant means? It means you get along with people you don't agree with. You use it in a context. Blatantly saying you don't agree with these people, blatantly saying you don't get along with them. It says, "We are tolerant, educated, progressive community that is kind and loving." You just called them names and told them they were all ignorant and racist and uneducated. Like, how is that loving? How is that kind? How is that tolerant? It just kills me, because I just swear that somehow people think that if you use a word, somehow it removes any kind of negative actions you may have. That somehow if I say I'm tolerant, say I'm loving and kind, that I can be a bigot, and it's okay because I said I'm loving and tolerant. Because again, it removes that concept. It completely discredits any type of point. Because again, I've witnessed people that would fit the description of how this guy is talking about Trump supporters, but I certainly wouldn't say all of them. And again, in my experiences, I would say most of them aren't that way. There certainly are that do exist, but again, they're not going to be talked about. They're not going to be seen. And again, too, that's one of those things where I feel like if you were much more honest and much more accurate with your perspective, if you weren't name calling, you weren't trying to just subjugate an entire group of people as one type of person, more people would be willing to listen. More people on Trump supporters would be willing to identify the cancerous behavior within their own side. But when you throw them all in the lump, they just self-reflect. And they're like, no, I'm highly educated. No, I'm very loving. I'm kind. I help. I donate. I volunteer. And so again, you're not going after the actual people that might fit that bill. And again, that's why it's so important to know what you're talking about, to be accurate. And again, that's one of the things that just baffles me, because I want to look up real fast, because it's one of those things where I think so many of us believe in this. I think so many on left and right, and all types of religion believe in tolerance and believe in just being kind and coexisting. But when you see the active people, representing this, you see the complete opposite. It seems very hopeless if you're left to your own devices and you're seeing the news. And again, to the representations of all these causes, because so many of them are exhibiting cancerous type behavior. They're exhibiting something that is toxic, that is just not a healthy way to behave. And so it makes it look like the cause is not valid. It makes it look like the cause is actually just this big lie. And so, yeah, you'll see articles, you'll see YouTube videos talking about how this cause is a lie and that cause is a lie, and there's no privilege on this or that. And it's just like, no, there is, but you have to be honest with the whole scope. You can't be looking through life through a filter and expect people to actually give your cause credibility, because if you take a quote and you just take part of it, and like I said, I read through that guy's article and everything he was saying, and I'm not, I don't think that he's necessarily a bad person. I'd love to be able to sit down and talk to somebody who would write something like this and just be objective and be like, I'm not, because again, I feel like a lot of times when I see YouTubers talking about these types of articles, they do so in an extremely aggressive manner, and again too, that they're mocking and laughing when they find out that somebody who spews hate is fired. And a lot of times, there's one guy specifically I love watching. His name's Tim Pool, and I want to say his YouTube channel is Timcast and Timcast IRL, and I would completely recommend it to anybody and everybody, because I feel like he's extremely objective, and there might be cases where you feel like he's got some bias, and I feel like all of us do have a certain level of bias because we have our own experiences, we have how we witness, the lens we see life through. But I do think he is one of those people out there that really wants to find the truth, and just, again, he's going to call it for what it is. He's going to, I've heard him tear into the left and the right, and so it's just very healthy for him to be consistently using the same level of standard to both sides that he sees. But again, I think that's just for myself, left or right, any type of religion and so forth. If you're going to have convictions, have them consistently. If you're appalled at certain behavior, you need to, you need to be able to look at that behavior. And again, that was something too that, just to finish up with the words and the meaning of tolerance, there's this, I would totally recommend this movie. It's called Office Space. It's freaking hilarious. But the crazy thing is there's actually a few, there's one specific subject that I'm sure I'll talk in a different episode. But so for this context, for those people who have seen Office Space, there's a point where everyone in this office space is being interviewed for their jobs, and they're supposed to justify why they work there and what they do, so that these guys in corporate can decide whether to keep them or can them. And so anyhow, so the first guy up is like the most imbalanced person that works there. I want to say his name is Bob. It's going to come to me. That he's being interviewed by the Bobs. That's right. But anyhow, so he's being interviewed, and they're asking him, "What do you do here?" And it's kind of been a few minutes into the interview, and this guy starts losing his patience, and he goes into this fume of, I want to say he's like, "I'm really good with dealing with people. I'm a people person. What the hell is wrong with you people?" And so, I mean, that just reminds me of that guy writing that article where he talks about how, stay out of here, we're tolerant. And I'm just like, it's not tolerance. Telling people to not come here because you don't agree with their behavior or their beliefs is intolerance. And so it just reminds me of that one scene. This guy ends up losing his mind, yelling at these two guys about how tolerant and how great he, or such a people person he was. And obviously, he's not a people person.
What would you say you do here?
Well, look, I already told you. I deal with the goddamn customers so the engineers don't have to. I have people skills. I am good at dealing with people. Can't you understand that? What the hell is wrong with you people?
But again, that was something too that I wanted to talk about as far as if about the concept of being the cancer or the cure. That was one of the things that I think that if you could somehow view these interactions, get to be objective, to get a healthy perspective on who's behaving correctly and not necessarily the sides. Because like I said, I feel like a lot of people define and defend misbehavior or defend intolerance based on like what position you're arguing. And it's like, no, tolerance is tolerance and intolerance is intolerance. It's not that the left or right is one or the other. It's not a point of view. It's not that a certain religion, it's not Judaism or Christianity or Islam or atheism or any other way of belief in the universe. It's not that one of those specific beliefs it is more tolerant or I shouldn't say is more tolerant, is tolerant or isn't tolerant, or is this or that. It's just a fact of what behavior are you exhibiting. That's tolerance or intolerance. It's not what side of the argument. Again, and so I wish that people could almost like, if you could somehow just look at the interaction. I don't want to say mute the volume because sometimes that does, I mean, I'm sure it does have some prevalency, but if you look at the behavior of people and how they're treating each other, not, that was one of the things that I was talking to somebody the other day about, as far as like having those consistent convictions is there was a video that showed these police officers, and I think they were ordered to protect a building, or they were ordered to protect a statue or something, and they were standing there and just gobs and gobs of like glass bottles and stuff she starts getting thrown at them, and they're not provoking any violence or anything. And just kind of for an example for people to take a step back and be like, yo, this is not right how we're treating these officers. Is that I'm not computer savvy enough. I'm sure if I put enough time in, but it'd probably take me days, years. I'm sure it'd take me forever. But anyhow, if I could somehow change the people throwing the glass objects to be wearing police uniforms and change the officers into looking like civilians and just show you that caption and be like, who's misbehaving? I feel like everyone would see it, because it's like, I feel like when certain people are going to a situation, they've already decided who's right and wrong. And so again, they justify the misbehavior based on the position rather than simply identifying it as misbehavior. And again, I feel like so many more people would support causes. So many more people would be tolerant of people of opposition if they saw that same tolerance being, submitted or being, I can't think of the word, but yes, if they saw other people on the other side of the aisle being civil, practicing what they were preaching, I think that more people would be swayed. And like I said, at the end of the day, I would much rather live in a society where we truly are tolerant and seeking coexistence, than us all just being, acting like we agree, just to keep civility, to act like somehow we all believe the same thing. Like I said, I want people to be who they are, even if I don't agree with them. And ultimately, I think most of us do. It's just a matter of trying to figure out how we as individuals can coexist. Like I said, it's one of those things where, I'm, because of my life experiences, I have very strong feelings about certain things, specifically like the military, the sacrifice that our brave men and women have in wartime and so forth. And so I'm going to have very strong points of view. So it probably wouldn't be very healthy for me and my mental health to go to some anti-war thing. Not because, I'm like super pro-war or anything, but it's just that I have a higher chance of hearing something that might upset me, that might be insensitive towards my pain. So I would say the same thing to other people. If you have a heightened sense of pain towards a certain form of pain, whether it be a cause like Black Lives Matter or equality for this or that, I would warn somebody to again self-examine and be honest with yourself of what you can deal with. And again, that's not a matter of saying, are you strong enough? It's just a matter of, like I said, just identifying that my pain, it influences what I'm emotionally going to be triggered by. And so I can talk all day about certain subjects, but there are subjects specifically like with war and the sacrifice our military go through, that will really tug at my emotions and again cloud my judgment, cloud my responses. And so again, when I see all these interactions of people just that are behaving very unhealthily, I wish people would self-examine and be like, yo, if you hear someone talking about something that's really making you upset, walk away or even step away, catch your breath, and try to think of collective true things without throwing gasoline on the fire. Try to again, whenever I get in a disagreement with my wife or with anybody, with my family, I really try to focus on what really bothered me, not what did they intend, not say you meant this and that, and respond emotionally, because that escalates the problem. But if I take a step back and I say, what about this bothered me? What about their lack of action or their action upset me, and how did that make me feel, and why? Was there other things that have happened to me in the past that really fueled that? And just make that distinction, because I feel like if you just respond off the hook, if you respond emotionally, you might, by your side, you might be seen as this super passionate person who and you might get all this backing. But again, for somebody who you're trying to convince, you're trying to convince them that their actions are wrong, I don't think that responding emotionally and heightened is really going to do any good. Like I said, a lot of times it's going to hurt your cause. It's going to discredit it, because again, in my own experiences with responding emotionally, it again is, unless somebody's gone through what you've gone through, they're not going to understand your misbehavior. They're just going to think that you're out of your mind, or that you're irrational, that you don't know what you're talking about. And again, ultimately, if you want to be heard, if you want your cause to be heard and propelled forward, you need to do what's necessary and effective, not what you feel and deem is justified. But again, lots of stuff to talk about. I pray for the day when psychological analysis and just talking about all these subjects is irrelevant, because we will hopefully one day get there. But as always, good luck and good night.